Oh, New York City. In 1811, it was carved up into a grid system. It was called the Commissioner's Plan. And in the Commissioner's Plan, it made the city easy to navigate, but also made some very interesting quirks, like Broadway cutting through in a diagonal and causing really unique triangular plots of land. Today, we're going to explore the secrets of Fifth Avenue and head all the way down to Madison Square Park, where we'll be learning about the Flatiron. Right now, we're starting at the Empire State's Building, which was constructed in 1931. And it was basically the tallest building anywhere around the world. But if you will walk around this area of Manhattan, you will basically see nothing around. So let's learn the secrets of Fifth Avenue for this episode of The New York Urbanist. I'm Ariel, and today we're actually going to be joined by my co-host who's behind the camera, Cliff. Say hello.
Hey, Ariel, thanks so much for having me again. This is a blast.
And Cliff is going to be answering and talking to all of you guys in the comments. So feel free to ask any questions whatsoever. Now let's walk down, and we're basically going to walk down Fifth Avenue. And the cool thing about Fifth Avenue, it has gorgeous architecture, which we're already starting to see a lot of as we see all the beautiful Gilded Age buildings, all the wonderful skyscrapers that are popping up here in Nomad, which is short for north of Madison Square Park. And now we're going to go to a place that's called K-Town. It's a little micro neighborhood right in the middle of this area of north of Madison. Back in the 1980s, a few Korean businesses started popping up, and more than 200,000 Koreans are now in the New York City metropolitan area. And this was now dubbed also as the Korean Times Square. So let's walk down here. Now this is actually one of the coolest views. So Cliff, let us know who's popping in right now.
Well, actually, somebody, Pangodis Seltamata, I think, she said, who's with you?
Oh, yeah, I'll show you in a moment, but let's wait for all these people to pass through. So here's Cliff, jump on camera. It's Cliff right over here. Cliff joined me for the Round K episode. He's going to try another different type of coffee soon.
I am.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
All right, so this is K-Town right here, known as the Korean Times Square as well. It's also known for an amazing place to grab very late night drinks because a few of the businesses are open 24/7. That might be a little bit different because of the pandemic, but cool thing is they also have really unique treats. So let's just admire the architecture a little bit more, how gorgeous it is.
Lauren says you look very dapper.
Oh, thank you so much, Lauren. I appreciate it. And there's a lot of like ramen spots, there's a lot of hot pot spots, a lot of very interesting restaurants all along here.
Stream Geeks says nice cut.
Hey, Stream Geeks, how's it going?
And Joseph Taylor says, yo, Ariel!
Hey, Joseph Taylor. Let us know where you're watching from right now. All right, let's go to a very interesting place. So, we're gonna go one block here. And the line might be too long. Let's see. Wow, okay, so a lot of people here today. So let's, places here are very packed. So let's get a tour of K-Town. I'll show you a little bit more places, but one of the popular things to do is karaoke here. And a lot of these buildings, it's more similar to like East Asian style, where there's a lot of businesses all stacked up on each other. And I'll show you another spot that's very popular. We got a lot of cutesy characters. We got the entire band of BTS. And here we have more it's like a Korean style Starbucks. It's called Tours de Jours. So there's plenty of stuff inside there. You guys actually want to take a peek inside? Let's go.
Yeah, I think they do.
Yeah, let's do.
Maybe Jesus saved you.
Sandy Pandy says busy day.
So you can see all the cool little different treats and everything. It's amazing. Yeah, it's beautiful. Let's continue walking. Yeah, so those are the different shops you can find in K-Town. But now let's go back on Fifth Avenue. And the thing is, underneath these beautiful lights and signs and everything, you actually have some very historic architecture, because during the heyday of the Gilded Age, a lot of people used this for hotels. So there was a few major hotels like this one over here, which I'll point out. And I'll have Aiden, who's manning the camera, to show the hotel, because I think that'll be the best way. So let's show over here. So this is the former Aberdeen Hotel, built in 1902. And you can see the beautiful details of the facade and everything. And some bubble tea. All right, let's go back on Fifth Avenue. Cliff, let us know what people are saying in the comments.
Oh my God, Ariel, the comments are coming in like selling, giving tickets at a bakery.
Wonderful. Who has the golden ticket?
First of all, you got people from around the world. They're going crazy, saying hello. India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, I mean, everywhere.
Salam alaikum, bonjour, buongiorno.
Susan Engel says, sharp-dressed man.
Susan, I appreciate it.
Thank
you so
you
much.
know, I got to tell you, Ariel, you are rakish.
Rakish, oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I do my best. I mean, we're in New York City after all, so we got to dress to impress. So now we're going to go a few more blocks down. Let's enjoy the views.
I wonder if Ariel could do a share my location.
What?
I wonder if Ariel, I can't see who it is.
Yeah.
If I could, I would. But it says, I wonder if Ariel could do a share my location on his broadcasts.
I wonder if that's
interesting, right?
Yeah, that is interesting. Maybe we'll see a little map pop out.
You never know.
If we're lucky.
If we're lucky.
And so here we're also seeing a combination of skyscrapers with also Gilded Age buildings as well. I just love walking around this neighborhood. It's always so interesting in terms of just looking up. You always have to look up every single time. And here we have the textile building.
Susie Palou says, nice production value.
Ooh, really?
Yeah. How do you like not holding a camera?
I don't have a camera. Where did my camera go?
Where is your camera?
Oh, he has it.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're enjoying the production value. Here's the textile building. And Aiden, let's show the textile building over there. So this is an example of one of the big blocky office buildings that were constructed here in the early 1900s. And of course, the textile business was huge because we're only a few blocks away from what used to be the garment district. And scaffolding.
How did the garment district get started?
How did the garment district got started? Well, in 1911, there was a massive fire that ravaged the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in Greenwich Village. And with that fire, more than 140 women died. It was a terrible tragedy. The city government hammered down, caused many businesses to start cracking down on fire code, and they had to adjust their buildings. So they could no longer use the lofts of Greenwich Village. They had to move further uptown, all the way to here, one neighborhood down to the garment district, where they could build basically skyscraper factories. And that gave business to all these other businesses on Fifth Avenue, which were more of the offices for shops, for retail, also lawyers, architects, all were based around this area, including one of the more famous architects in all of New York City history, Stanford White, had an office just a few blocks down. Keep his name in mind because we're going to talk about him very soon. This is one of the newer skyscrapers, so Aiden, let's show them this new skyscraper over here.
The Inspired Life says, bring on the architecture.
Yes, bring on the architecture. That's the most beautiful thing about New York City. Now, architecture, sometimes we have these huge buildings. Sometimes we forget the beauty of a church. So here we have Marble Collegiate Church. This church was one of the very first Protestant parishes set up in the US back in the 1600s, 1623. This was built in 1854, and it's in the Romanesque style because you can notice with all the rounded arches. But this church is very famous for one particular pastor. This pastor wrote The Power of Positive Thinking, which was published in 1952. Now, The Power of Positive Thinking, you might have heard of it. Have you heard of it, Cliff, before?
Have I?
Yeah, The Power of Positive Thinking.
Yes, I have. Of course I have.
Right. It's one of the most famous self-help books in all of history. So if you know Think of Grow Rich and Oprah's Book Club, you probably heard of Power of Positive Thinking. Right underneath this poor tarp is Norman Vincent Peale. He was the pastor here for 52 years, and he was the writer of The Power of Positive Thinking. Now, his sermons drew a very large audience and many influential people. One of those influential people was actually the Obamas. They came over here and saw a few sermons by Norman Vincent Peale. Another influential person that came here, maybe infamous, was a guy who ran for president back in 2016. And despite him basically showing everywhere that he was about to lose, he just kept saying, no, I'm going to win, I'm going to win, I'm going to win, I'm going to win. It's all good. It's going to be the best election ever. He followed this man's belief system. And then he became president. But that's for another story. Let's continue walking down. It's a beautiful church as well. So here we're now...
My browser seemed to have frozen.
What?
My browser froze.
All right, so now let's do a refresh.
I did a refresh and it's not refreshing.
Down the block. Let's go. We'll continue on with the show then.
Go on YouTube.
And here we got a beautiful view. So let's show this view down here, Aiden. This is gorgeous. We see the Flatiron building there in the distance, which we're going to talk about soon. And that's why Broadway cuts through here and causes these weird rectangular plots of land. And lots of traffic. The pandemic has come to an end, apparently, due to the traffic. All right, let's cross. Let's go. I love looking down the streets. It's a great perspective you got. It's really cool to see up and down the streets. And when you can see up down the avenue specifically, you end up noticing that New York City isn't a perfect flat piece of land. With the commissioner's plan, they put streets and avenues right through the middle of hills, mounds, huge piles of schist. And they decided to persist forward and just build the grid system. So that's why we barely can tell any of the natural topography of New York City. And here we have a nice little quaint church, 1849. This is the church of the Transfiguration.
Ronald Reyes sent you a $2 Canadian super chat.
Hey, Ronald, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you. So if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to ask. So this is the Church of Transfiguration. This was also known as the Actors' Church because actors were usually not admitted to go to other churches. They were seen as kind of like low-class citizens, which is very different from today. Nowadays, actors probably have their own private church if they do go to church. So this is where they attended, but there's one little architectural unique thing about this. Here we have what's called a lich. Cliff, do you know what a lich is?
No, I don't.
It's a bit weird, right? That we have like a huge structure outside the structure.
It is, and yeah, it is.
So a lich means death. It's because this is a little structure for pallbearers during a funeral to wait with the coffin right in the middle. And then they would continue on into the church to continue with the service. So there we go. We have a lich right here in front of the church. Now the church also has a nice interior, which we can see. Hopefully, I wish we could see, but usually these churches are closed. So let's continue on down Fifth Avenue. Let's go.
People think that I'm actually holding a camera.
Cliff has many hands. He's holding 3 cameras at the same time.
Right. And a waitress said, "Oh, I love the architecture of that church."
Yeah, I mean, let's admire it a little bit more. Here on Urbanist, we take our sweet, sweet time. It's a great place to just sit down and relax. It's beautiful. It's also an Episcopal church, which is basically the American version of Anglican as well. And one of the attendants of this church was actually the actress Lucille Ball, who many people know from I Love Lucy. Cue the music. Let's continue going down. All right, Cliff, what are people saying?
A waitress again says, "Learn something new." Wendy Marriott says, "Cool." Ariel, this is very unique. I forgot who it was who just said, "This is the best stream so far."
I'm glad. I mean, Cliff luckily has a lot of hands. So
I'm like an octopus.
He also has a computer that he's switching between cameras. A waitress, thank you so much. And Wendy, I appreciate you tuning in.
Upper West Sider said Church of Scientology.
That's a little bit further away. I think that one is in Times Square area, right next to the Hamilton Theater.
Just Kate said, "I love churches."
Me
Lynch
too.
Gate? Question mark?
It was a lich gate.
Right.
Yeah. And here, oh, there we go. Starting to see the city open up, and we're gonna see. Usually you have to look up, you have to look down, but sometimes you gotta look on the side of the buildings. And we gotta look on the side of one specific building, right over here. On the corner of 27th Street and 5th Avenue.
We're getting a lot of thank yous.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you, everyone. So right now, ask any burning questions you have about New York City, whatever you're really deeply curious about in terms of Midtown Manhattan. Feel free to ask anything.
Getting a lot of comments, no questions yet. Architecture similar to the churches in my hometown of Rochester. That was by Rachel Harris.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
What's up, man?
Hey, how's it going? Ariel, what's your name?
¿Cómo estás? Me llamo Waldemar.
Guatemala. Muy bien.
man.
Good to
How are
see you. How long you been watching?
Oh, it's been a couple of months now.
Oh, that's
Yeah, I
awesome.
watch John's channel and everybody else's
Oh, you do?
channels, yeah.
Oh,
I
that's
saw your
wonderful.
stream on the Bronx.
Yeah,
I live
yeah.
on the east. I live in Club City. I'm on the east side of the Bronx.
Oh, that's wonderful. We're actually live right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we are. How's it going, man? Thank you so much for tuning in.
Hey, no
Appreciate
problem.
it. Have a great day.
You too, man.
Yeah.
Take care.
So there we go. That's cool. That was not planned whatsoever. I know Cliff is very good at doing multiple things at the same time. But
I'm not that good. Carmen Fernandez says, so rustic among skyscrapers.
right. It is like a little nice humble abode in the middle of the skyscrapers.
Someone wants to know if you can turn right on red with cars. And I actually know the answer to that.
Oh, Cliff is more of a driver than I am. So Cliff, take that.
So New York State in 1977 enacted a law that you could make a full stop and turn right on red. But it became such an issue in New York City with car accidents that law was eliminated for New York City, all 5 boroughs, and you cannot turn right on red in New York City. But you can in other places in New York State.
I see. So if you break the law here in New York, just say you're from Long Island.
That's right.
I'm joking. I don't condone that.
Ignorance is no excuse for the law, Mr. Vieira.
Right. All right, so let's go over here. I present to you the Gilded Age Lady. The Gilded Age Lady was made in 2019 by an artist by the name of Tristan Eaton. And Tristan Eaton composed a few different elements in here. She is in the form of Evelyn Nesbit, who was a very famous actress at the time in the early 1900s, late 1800s. Evelyn Nesbit was known for being a chorus girl. And she caught the eye of one of the most famous architects in New York City history, Stanford White, who only worked here about 1 to 2 blocks away, also lived here. We'll talk a little bit more about that soon. But this also depicts Audrey Mudson. And Audrey Mudson was known as Miss Manhattan, and you'll see her likeness everywhere in New York City. Miss Manhattan is depicted in places like the USS Maine, which is the beautiful monument right at the main entrance of Central Park. You also see her at the Titanic Memorial on 103rd Street, and as well as the entrance of Manhattan Bridge at the Manhattan side. So she is basically the first supermodel. The other thing that this depicts, interestingly enough, is it depicts the early age of the Tenderloin. So we talked a little bit about the garment district. Before, this was a noisy place where they're doing a lot of construction right now. This was noisy with crime and with gambling and other illicit activities. One of the people depicted in this mural is Clubber Williams. He was responsible for the nickname of this neighborhood, the Tenderloin, because he said, well, I'm paraphrasing his quote, well, back in Lower Manhattan, I ate chuck steak. Here, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna have some tenderloin. Which means that the bribes he was expecting were pretty low end back in Lower Manhattan. Over here, he was gonna get bigger bribes. Of course, the neighborhood has changed since then. Now we have more tourists over here, more construction. So let's continue on, let's go.
You're getting a nice amount of comments on the mural.
Yeah, the mural's gorgeous.
Alexandra says, Alexandra, your follower, says, very nice mural.
Yeah.
Susan Engels says, cool lady. Wendy Marriott says, wowie wow.
Right, wow, yeah, Alexandra, welcome. And let us know where you're watching from. Have you guys been to this area of New York City? Let us know. We got
awesome
outdoor seating. Look, here, perfect example where you can dine, sit down, relax with a good cocktail, and have some jackhammers right next to you.
Hello from Colombia.
Colombia? Oh,
Yep.
Cool. Welcome from Colombia. Y cualquier persona tiene una pregunta en español.
That was Raul
Puede
Roca.
preguntar. Raúl, bienvenidos.
Yeah.
Welcome.
And Miguel Bisbal says, wow, the Empire State Building in the background.
It's gorgeous, right? Right down there. Here we can get a better view of the Gilded Age lady, actually.
Master Kren 4. Hello
Ah.
from Ukraine.
Aiden, can you zoom in to the very top of her hat? There's a little statue with a bow and arrow.
It'd be cool if you got both shots.
So that is the statue of Diana. And the statue of Diana used to be right here keep that in mind. But first, let's go to a rather strange obelisk in the middle of New York City. What happened?
So you got a comment from SF Fields 99.
Yeah.
You can see and relax to the sounds of construction.
Right, it's beautiful. I mean,
Right?
it's truly New York.
It's meditative.
Yeah. You know, one of the most famous spiritual leaders, Ram Dass, had a quote saying, "You think you're enlightened? Well, try going to your parents' house for a week." Well, I would say the New York version, you think you're enlightened? Come to New York City and dine outside. All right, let's go over here to this obelisk. So let's cross the street. Welcome to the intersection of Broadway, 5th Avenue, 23rd Street. Causes this weird kind of plaza triangle. People call them squares. It's called Madison Square, but it's not actual square. Right here is the Worth Monument. And the Worth Monument is an obelisk. Interesting thing is New York City has a few obelisks. Let's take a closer look.
SJ says, love those buildings.
Right, yeah. We're going to learn more about the buildings on this other side. This was a famous general. Watch out behind you, Cliff. Watch out. This was a famous general during the Mexican War. The Mexican War, U.S. conquered Mexico, went as far down as to Monterrey. Kind of worked as a prelude to the Civil War because all the greatest stars of the Civil War, all the famous people fought in the Mexican War. General Worth was one of them. He was also a Freemason. So the Freemasons decided to bury him right here. So underneath our feet, General Worth is buried. Is one of the only people buried in a public spot in all of New York City. Usually people are buried in the church graveyard or in the proper graveyard. But I mentioned Freemason. Well, it's because only a block away, the headquarters for the Freemasons is located for New York City. It's one of the Grand Lodges. However, 1857, just shortly before, there was another obelisk built at St. Paul's Chapel, all the way in downtown Manhattan. And we're going to show St. Paul's Chapel was built for another Freemason by the last name of Emmett. And all the way up north, right behind the Metropolitan Museum of Art, there is another obelisk called Cleopatra's Needle, which is a popular tourist attraction in Central Park. If you take a straight line and go from St. Paul's Chapel all the way to Cleopatra's Needle, do that on the map, then look right at the center of that line. I'm not joking with you. You can do this on Google Earth. You'll find this obelisk. Is it coincidence? I don't know. Who knows? What do you think, Cliff?
Well, Spanish 21 says one obelisk is at the back of Met Art.
Who?
I'm not really fully
Is there
understanding
another soldier buried in a public place?
Now I get
Very
obelisk. Obelisk.
Oh, it's an obelisk.
Obelisk. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
No worries.
Is Grant Tombs in a cemetery?
So-
Upper West Sider says.
Grant's tomb is a proper mausoleum. I don't think you would consider this a mausoleum. So Grant is actually entombed in a mausoleum. But otherwise, this guy's almost buried right in the middle of the street. But when he was buried here in 1857, there was nothing around. So it was a very quaint place to lay rest. So now we're gonna go to the Flatiron Building, which is this beautiful triangular structure that is perfectly wedged into this odd triangular plot of land. As I mentioned, it's a little quirk of our grid system. Let's get a little bit closer to it. And we're seeing all the beautiful buildings behind me. We're going to talk about those soon. 1902. Well, actually, let's go a little bit further back. Late 1800s, Chicago was ravaged by a huge fire. That fire was caused because of all the wooden buildings and also the lack of fireproofing in the stone skyscrapers. One of the architects that was hired to remedy that problem with fire vulnerabilities was Daniel Burnham. Daniel Burnham innovated steel skyscrapers, basically making a skyscraper with the steel frame so it could get taller. It's cheaper, but it was also a little bit more fireproof. Daniel Burnham was hired in 1902 to build a strange structure in this triangular plot of land. Now, before, this was called Eno's Flatiron. It was a series of different smaller buildings, all constructed in a mishmash. And let's actually cross the street over here. It was all these buildings that were of differing architectural styles, all crammed into this triangular plot of land. Now, these buildings actually had electric signs. They were taking advantage of the very first electric signs in New York City. But beyond that, they were also, they had ticker symbols for the election results for the major newspapers, like the New York Times. This was the precursor to Times Square. But then they had to knock it down in order to build a bigger office building. The construction company that was going to take residence in the building was the Fuller Company. Now, when they built this huge structure, people were scared shitless because they thought it was going to topple over. Let's get closer.
Ariel, just so you know, you did get super chats from Joseph and Myrna.
Joseph, oh cool, thank you, Joseph. And who else? What else are people saying?
Oh my gosh, the comments are like crazy. They love this particular stream today. The comments are great. I mean, just on and on and on about how much they love what you're doing today and how you're doing it.
Wonderful. So let's say hi.
So production of this is a 10 out of 10. Ronald Reyes.
Ronald. Let's just say the first names. We'll be okay with that.
Okay, Ronald. Yeah. Someone was asking how high were you up in the Empire State Building, and someone
So I learned. Cliff, luckily, has multiple hands. He learned the power of teleportation.
That's right.
So he was able to teleport down.
Dave Hardy.
It's all tricks of the trade, everyone. We can't reveal all of our secrets.
I got to tell you, it's magic.
It is magic.
Loving this new format, says Dave. Very professional. You could sell this to the History Channel.
History Channel. Hit us up right now.
Take that note to self.
Note to self, exactly. Hit up the History Channel right now. Send them an email with this link.
The production today is exceptional.
Let's say hi to a few more people that will continue.
Definitely got to say hi. Yeah. Leon, cool, bro.
Cool, bro, to you too. Cool story, bro.
Let's see. Oh my gosh, it's just rolling in.
Cool.
Wally, great to meet you.
Molly, nice to see you here. Welcome.
Hey, Ariel, said Wally, I just shook your hand.
Awesome. Perfect.
Dennis says, great job.
Ooh, cool. Thank you, Dennis.
Adam asks, how tall is the Flatiron Building?
Ooh, great question. So a little bit higher than 250 feet tall. Interesting thing is that it's actually higher than the Big Ben. So if you want a good comparison, it's almost twice the height of Big Ben. It's 22 floors high. Let's go closer.
Someone just said that I am the Yoda of multitasking.
Yeah, Cliff is indeed the Yoda of multitasking. In the beginning of the broadcast, he told me, like, Ariel, try not, do. He told me that. And we're doing.
Alex says hi from Portugal.
Hey, Alex from Portugal. Hola. That's the only word I know in Portuguese. Obrigado. That's the other word I know in Portuguese.
One more. Carl says, definitely better than any programs on the History Channel.
Look at this. So when Daniel Burnham originally built this, he didn't want, mask malfunction. He didn't actually want a huge thing sticking out. If you can see, we have scaffolding. This is sticking out of the building. This, people started affectionately calling it the cow catcher because it looked like a huge cow catcher. The reason they end up building this is because they had to maximize more retail space. Like all things in New York City, we gotta make more money. So they extended the building to Daniel Burnham's consternation. However, this building was originally called the Fuller Building, and people were starting to call it by a different name. I mentioned the word Flatiron. Yeah, that might be a beautiful name for a neighborhood. What is Flatiron? I mean, for many people of our generation, probably haven't heard that name before. Probably think it's some old Dutch lord. No, not quite. The Flatiron, people called it after, affectionately, one of the most loved pieces of a Monopoly. This is a really loved piece. Everyone goes to this little piece, the Flatiron. Of course, the Fuller Company, who was a major construction company based in Chicago, were pissed off that they were calling it the Flatiron. They complained, but it didn't help anything. The name just stuck and also became the name of the neighborhood. So now when you think about the Jenga building, which is 56 Leonard, it's probably gonna stick. No one's gonna call it 56 Leonard. It's gonna probably call it the Jenga building. Let's go right over here. Oh, okay. Wait. No wind? Wind. Look at that. Oh yeah. It's not that strong today, but there's been many architectural studies that has said that this area has created a crazy wind tunnel. So if you come here in the right conditions, which is most of the time, there's a huge gust of wind passing through here. Now that huge gust of wind actually caused a group of men to leer at Gilded Age women passing through. The police tried to crack down, and they had to pass laws, a misdemeanor, saying that you cannot loiter in front of the building, otherwise you'll be kicked out. And they would call them 23 skidoo. That term is still used to kind of say to someone, shoo away. They used to be leering right over here. Luckily, that's no longer an issue.
Ariel, we do have an interesting question.
Yeah.
A waitress wants to know, how did they know decades ago where there was sufficient schist to support such tall buildings?
Wow, yeah, that is a great question. So there is a myth about New York City. If you notice, there's not that many skyscrapers in the middle between Midtown Manhattan and downtown Manhattan. The schist is indeed much lower. It's not really a big issue when it comes to construction. The reason we don't have any skyscrapers in this middle area is because this used to be called the tenement district. So remember that Gilded Age woman we talked about earlier, Evelyn Nesbit? That actress would not venture down beyond Union Square because it would be very dangerous territory to do so. Much lower income neighborhoods, a lot more crime ridden, and it would just not be typical of people who lived here who were middle and higher class to go down. So it was more of an economic issue, and that's why, especially because of the subway, they constructed it all the way in Times Square. That's why we have a Midtown, and that's why we have downtown.
Here's a statement, but I really think I want to turn it into a question.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's true or not, but it could be. Spencer says, first building to get electrical.
Ooh, first building to get electricity. That's a great question. I don't know, but it might be Edison's building, which is a block away from Water Street. And that was the first Edison's office. That might be the first building that had electricity, but I don't know for sure. Let us know in the comments if you do.
Interesting.
But the electricity was responsible for having a bunch of like electric signs on the original buildings here. Yeah.
Very cool.
And the cool thing about the Flatiron is that each side has a completely different view. So they all look different on each side.
You know, it's amazing. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's amazing how this building looks like an older European building, like in Paris. But in Paris, every building is like this, whereas in Manhattan, it's so eclectic.
It does, yeah, you're right. Well, in Paris, they passed specific laws to maintain a ubiquitous style throughout the entire city. Here in New York City, we never did that. We adopted Beaux-Arts, and that's the style of this building, which is a mishmash of different architectures.
Jacquet wants to know if I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, if the back of the building is shaped like the front.
Well, sure. How are we doing on time?
It is 1:40.
What?
1:40.
All right, let's go around the building. Let's do it. Let's do a brisk walk around the building. Now, in 1990, the elevator of this building got flooded. How does an elevator get flooded? Well, it's because the elevators in the Flatiron were originally a hydraulic power system. And the pipes broke, and it flooded the entire elevator with many feet of water. And I think here we'll get an interesting side view. Yeah.
I think we may be running low on camera battery
Okay.
on yours.
All right, so let's go down this way.
5%? Let's see. Myrna says, that's great. Never saw the back of the building.
Are you having gimbal issues?
Yeah, sorry. Let's see. Avi, new moon is beginning of a new lunar cycle. Good day to plant seeds of intention. Mike,
Oh, I like that.
what the temperature is here. I'm going to say it's in the 40s, maybe 50s.
Okay.
It's sunny, there's not a cloud in the sky. It's absolutely beautiful. After you, Ariel, Mr.
Thank you, Cliff. Cliff is miles away, actually. Truly a Yoda. So here we have the backside. The beautiful, oh, look at that beautiful backside of the Flatiron. See, it all looks different. Right? It's not a perfect triangle. It's the first anyone's bubble. Times Square is not a square. The Flatiron is not a perfect triangle. Hard truths. Hard truths. It's Oh, yeah. So.
Check louder.
Oh, okay. All right.
We know you can.
Oh, because we no longer have our mic set up, so I gotta speak a little bit louder. Everyone, we're doing it live. So, because we're doing it live, we had to change up the setup a little bit. Luckily, Cliff is good at doing it immediately. So, I'm gonna speak a little bit louder. Unleash my true thespian. So here we have one of the most beautiful buildings of New York City. So here we have the Metropolitan Life Insurance Building. The Metropolitan Life Insurance Building was constructed because the president of the company was a huge, massive fan of Venice. And he loved Venetian architecture, especially loved the St. Mark's Tower, the Campanile. So he built the Campanile. The Campanile actually destroyed in 1902. 1902 in Venice, it collapsed to the ground, absolutely destroyed. Well, he was such a huge fan, he said, hey, I'm going to recreate it here in New York City. And thus he hired Napoleon Lebrun and Sons in order to build a new version of the Campanile in New York City. So we have a clock tower that looks exactly like the one in Venice. Now, this clock tower is actually taller than Big Ben. So we have our own version of Big Ben. So I'm not bragging or anything, but we have a clock tower that's a little bit higher than Big Ben. Also, it has a beautiful golden dome on top. Now, right next to it, we have a really odd kind of building. It looks like a kind of a stump, doesn't it? Cliff, it looks like. Right,
Yeah, you know what it looks like to me? It looks like someone chopped off the top.
right. It's chopped off. Yeah. What happened?
That's what I'd like to know.
So we have to go back to 1929. And in 1929, the stock market crashed. This building was originally going to be 100 stories tall. However, because of the stock market crash, it could not continue construction. They decided to halt the construction, so we were left with a sum of 25 stories. But imagine this, we almost had a 100-story tall Beaux Arts building. That would be really cool. So, do we have time for one more stop?
It all depends upon what the octopus is saying.
All right.
The other hand.
I'm on charge. I'm on charge.
Okay, we're good. Well, let's do one more stop. Let's go. We gotta do a speed run. Are you ready? Speed run.
Mike J says nice scarf.
Thank you so much, Mike J. All right, let's go to the crosswalk here.
Ernest says bigger bed.
What?
Bigger bed. Ernest says bigger bed.
Bigger Ben? Yeah, it's a bigger Ben. Yeah, you're right. It's a bigger Ben. It's a great name. Yeah. It's great that here in New York City we have our reconstruction. So the one in Venice right now is actually built after this one. So is the Venice one a reconstruction? Depends on your interpretation. Right over there we see a guy called William Seward. He was the guy who bought us Alaska. Held several high political offices, including Secretary of State. And this guy, Cliff, how tall does he look?
What's that?
How tall does this guy look?
Right here?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say 10 feet.
I mean, like if you were a real person, what do you think?
Oh, how tall I think he'd be? I don't know, about 5'11".
5'11", right? He looks like pretty tall.
Yeah.
He's actually only 5'4".
No way.
Apparently, the sculptor used Lincoln's body in order to, make it cheaper.
Really?
And maybe to make him look a little bit more regal.
Yeah, but they had to use more material.
Well, yeah, I guess. Anyone who knows William Seward knows, oh, that's a lot. Alright, let's head over here. We'll go. Here's the original Shake Shack. Number one Shake Shack. It actually started as a hot dog stand selling hot dogs that were made at 11 Madison Park. Now, 11 Madison might be a familiar name for many people because it's one of the most high-end restaurants in New York City. So like that in mind.
This monument, amazing look, Pat says.
Oh yeah, right. It's amazing. I mean, there's so much here. Like I can easily do like 2 or 3 hour video.
And the music that was playing back there,
right.
Someone said sounds like supermarket music.
Sounds like supermarket music.
There was
also
Mondiv Ride.
Oh,
Like the name.
it also sounds like Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers.
That's right.
Alright, let's go to our final stop over here. I can easily go for like 3 hours, but Cliff can only hold 3 cameras for so long.
I'll tell you what, my third arm is getting really tired. You know what the problem is? The one you put on my leg.
Precisely.
And how do you get that image stabilization?
Somehow you're doing it, man.
I know, I think it's you and your engineering.
The way you're balancing is crazy.
I know, it is nuts.
Here we have the Appellate Court. And the Appellate Court of Appeal. The statues. People from all around the world. Originally there were 8 statues. Each of them 8 feet tall. And we have like Alfred the Great, Zoroaster, Solon. We have like Churges and a few others. But one of the statues is actually missing. And this was built in 1902, where the statue was installed, was the statue of Muhammad. In 1950s, the statues were in a decrepit state, so they had to repair them or sell them. New York City petitioned to not sell them. However, the powers that be from other Islamic countries petitioned New York City to take down the Muhammad statue and destroy it. and that's what they did. So we only have 77.
Carmen says beautiful.
Right, it's gorgeous. Aiden, let's show the building. We have one secret here. One little secret. It's a little bit of a somber secret. And it's a bit easy to miss because you see these beautiful statues, the marble, it's gorgeous. Over here, we have something that says, indifference to injustice is the gate to hell. What is this? In August 1944, there was an air bombing raid in Auschwitz. We took a photo of the complex from above. They truly did not know, the US truly did not know what was happening there. They only found out many months later. They actually bombed many miles away, about 6 miles away. And one of the main generals always regretted it.
Describes the emotional impact that it has on you. And these buildings, I mean, if you want me to say anything about it, I can, but I don't know.
Tell us a little bit. Yeah,
okay, so you see these buildings here. Those buildings were originally horse barns, and they would hold like 60 or 70 horses in them. And when they turned it into a concentration camp, this is what held, these horse barns are what held all the Jews. There was no insulation, just slats of wood, and they had like 1 or 2 stoves to warm up all of the Jews. And so in the winters, it was freezing inside here. And what else would happen was the wood was so thin and so dry, it was like tinder. Can't hear it?
There's no mic, so we gotta speak to it.
Okay, it was like tinder.
Yeah.
So these would burn down and kill all the people inside.
Oh yeah.
And if you visit Auschwitz, you'll see the remnants of it. It's something that everybody needs to go to not to forget, but it's not a pleasant experience.
I see. So let's Ada, let's show you close up so people can see it. Thank you, Cliff, for telling us.
Yeah, I don't mean to be a downer.
No, not at all. I mean, that's New York City history. So
There's no sound.
you can't hear me at all.
Yes, they can't hear me.
Oh, okay.
You want to pull this? That's the power, yeah.
Let's put on the mic though. Let's put on the mic again. If it does not finish it.
Yeah, I can put that in all of it. Thank you.
So, sorry about the sound issues and the wind issues. New York City's wind is acting up. I might be the Flatiron building. That might be the responsible perpetrator here. So here we have, it's called Madison Square Park. Well, why is it called Madison Square Park when Madison Square Garden is at 34th Street? Well, Madison Square Garden is actually the 4th iteration of Madison Square Park. And this over here was the location of the first 2. In the very beginning, this was the Hippodrome by P.T. Barnum, the guy who later became famous for the circus. This was also the first place where they held the circus in
I have to ask him if he wants to.
in the late 1800s. In 1890, Stanford White was commissioned to build a new Madison Square Garden with the statue of Diana, which we zoomed in on earlier, of the Gilded Age Lady mural. There was a huge statue of Diana. It was a beautiful complex, all in the Beaux-Arts style, meant to look like a church from Seville, Spain. And this is where a terrible murder happened. June 25th, 1925. I'm getting the year a little bit wrong, so June 25th, early 1900s. Harry Thaw, a man who was obsessed with the architect Stanford White, thought he was the beast, the devil incarnate. The reason he thought he was the devil incarnate was, according to him, his own wife, Evelyn Nesbit, claimed that she was abused by him. Stanford White was a very famous architect. Stanford White paid for her family to live here in New York City, and he was very generous with his money, but apparently he also had quite a dark side. When Harry Thaw found this out, his obsession grew even larger with Stanford White. And one night, Stanford White was attending the rooftop garden. There was a show called Mademoiselle Champagne, and a song was being sung called "If I Can Only Live for a Million Girls," something along those lines. Harry Thaw takes out a gun, goes right behind Stanford White, and shoots him in the back of the head. He puts his gun up, shoots a few times into the air so people know that he's not shooting at anyone else, and he says, "My wife was ruined by this man." Stanford White was shot to death in his own building. This ended up becoming the trial of the century. Evelyn Nesbit testified against Stanford White, of course, in order to protect her husband, Harry Thaw. But Harry Thaw also had his own dark side, and he was sent to prison, but later he was convicted again for whipping a boy. Quite a terrible murder that happened here. And that shows the entire history of Madison Square Garden, because after this, Madison Square Garden was torn down. I guess people didn't really want to come to this theater anymore. Maybe it was soured by that terrible crime, and it was moved into Hell's Kitchen area. And then later we had the modern version that we have in 34th Street. But now we see this building, the New York Life Insurance Building, and let's just finish at this very corner over here. And the New York Life Insurance Building is built by another famous architect of New York City. He was responsible for the Woolworth Building. Let me know if you know who that is. His name is Cass Gilbert, and we'll end right over here, actually, right by the main entrance. Always look at the plaque. Built in 1908. And here, see all the beautiful details. Let's show all the beautiful details. So this was built by Cass Gilbert in 1928, and it's, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful buildings you can see from the view of the Empire State Building. So in the Empire State Building, when you look southward, you'll see that huge golden triangle. That golden triangle is this building over here. So thank you everyone so much for watching. Cliff, thank you so much for co-hosting behind the camera.
It's my
and
pleasure.
reading comments and everything. If you want to see more of these videos, press that like button. Also, feel free to share this video, and maybe stay tuned. Maybe next month we'll have a continuation of the New York Urbanist. Keep being awesome, and always keep